It is seen. Thank you. All right. So, chapter 13, the reason it's so short from a standpoint of us covering it is because we're talking about these financial measures, the big thing to do with these financial measures is ratio analysis. And we've covered all these ratios. So, we're not going to cover them all again because you guys have them. But what I will tell you is the 4 ratios that you need to have for the final exam. You do not have to memorize all of them. So I will tell you those. The 2 things we're going to talk about is horizontal and vertical analysis. So the first thing that does here is it basically goes through and summarizes each of them. So horizontal analysis basically helps you look at things as they unfold over time. And you'll hear this a lot in the business world in general. It doesn't matter if you're in accounting, if you're in marketing, if you're in management, if you're in HR. It's just going to depend on what you're looking at and how you want to analyze things. So, for example, gross profit is what they're looking at. So how does our profit look from this year to last year? At the college, we look at head count. So, for example, we're not looking at money. We're looking at how many students are in the seat. Right now, for example, we are 18% down in student enrollment for the fall compared to last year at this exact time. Now, some ways that actually surprises us because supposedly more students will not be going away to school, especially freshmen, just based on everything that's going on and some colleges being online in the fall. But at the same time, we believe that there's kind of a scare to enroll right now, which I also can understand. So we are always looking at this time frame. How do things compare from one year to the next? It gives you an idea of how you're progressing. Obviously, the trend is you want it to go up. When things are going down, that's not good. For us as a college, one thing that we have seen is, it sounds weird, but the number of 18-year-olds is decreasing. That means people starting 18 years ago started having less kids. So if the number of 18-year-olds are decreasing, what you're going to see in colleges is the number of kids that are going to be younger. So we got to go out and get a different market, all right? So that's trend analysis. Companies are always looking at how they're progressing from one year to the next. Vertical analysis looks at relationships in the financial statements. So for example, we are looking at here things like how much, oops, let me go backwards, didn't mean to do that. How things compare within. So gross profit is 25% of sales. That gives you an idea of how we're performing within. So remember what gross profit tells us. It tells us the most money we can make before any expenses. So if our gross profit is anything below starting to get 25%, you're starting to make very little money. So that's what we're looking at. All right, and so then we get to our ratios. Ratios help us, as we've talked about the whole semester, compare our financial statements to other people's financial statements because it takes away the dollar amount. We can compare Walmart to Target. We can compare Schnucks to Deerbergs. So it allows us to do all those comparisons that we would not be able to do if we didn't have ratio analysis. Okay, it's essential for us to be able to use those statements. All right, so we're going to look at horizontal analysis first. All right, again, we're looking at in terms here because we are looking at the financial. We're not necessarily looking at head count like we do at the college. The way that you come up with this is current year divided by, minus prior year divided by the prior year. This is how you get your percent change. The percent change is always what we're wanting to see. How much did we increase? How much better did we do? Obviously, we always want this number to go up. So current year minus prior year divided by the prior year. All right, so if we look at, I'm just going to put these all out here at the same time. Slowly. Up, not too slow. All right, so when we look at all these, look at the first one. Net sales shows that it is increased 10%. The cost of sales increased 10.5. But then look at the gross profit. Overall, it only increased 9.2. So because that cost of sales increased more than the revenue, the gross profit didn't go up by much. So if we look at here, notice all these numbers increased. We kind of got to throw out this one because it's income tax expense. All right, obviously if all the other numbers go up, income tax is going to go up. And in the end, net income actually went up the most. So it went up a bigger percentage than everything else. But it helps us compare all those numbers. All right, so that's horizontal analysis. That is used a lot throughout the whole company. A lot of companies use horizontal analysis. Vertical analysis, not quite as much. All right, you can use it in the income statement or the balance sheet. Income statement, you usually use it as a percent of sales. Balance sheet, you'd use it as a percent of assets. How much are different things in my company as compared to assets? So if we look at it as a comparison for the income statement, your cost of sales, which we just showed the gross profit, but if you look at it here, this is Lowe's, which we've been talking about this semester. And several of you guys mentioned this on your annual report. Their net income is very small. 4.8% is their net income. And that's because if you look, their gross profit is very small. That starts at 34%, and then they have all their operating expenses, and their operating expenses are so big because if you think about what they have, these huge warehouses and the number of employees, that's where they start at. But they operate with a net income that is that low. And a couple people mentioned they didn't want to invest in them because that was their income was so low. But you also then have to compare them to Home Depot to see, is this a good net income or not? Excuse me, is he actually moving? Because it's right now. Okay. Sorry about that. So you got to compare them to Home Depot to know for sure. And then we have all of our ratios. And the one thing I just want to talk about with these ratios is these three words right here: profitability, liquidity, and solvency. All right. You will not have to, on the final, put these ratios into these categories, but I want you to understand what the categories mean because they are words that you will hear. Hopefully, profitability is something that you understand already. Profitability means that a company can generate revenue. All right, if you're profitable, you're generating revenue. If you are profitable, it means that your income coming in is more than the expenses that you are going out. All right, solvency means that you have the ability to pay your interest and your debt when it's due. All right, can you pay your interest? Can you pay your debt? A company is solvent if they can do that. Liquidity means they have enough current assets to repay liabilities when they're due. So those two are different. A company is liquid when they have the short-term assets to cover their liabilities. So just because a company isn't liquid does not mean they will go bankrupt. It means that they now have to dig into their long-term assets. But if a company is not solvent, that means they're probably going to go under because that means they can no longer pay their interest and debt when due. So solvent and liquid are different. Liquid is the first thing that usually goes when somebody's having financial difficulties. After that, they become insolvent. So just a little bit. And then we have all of our ratios. And if you notice our profitability ratios, every one of them have income or revenue as part of them. Because you have to have income, you have to have revenue coming in order to be profitable. Liquidity ratio are all about how quick. Current ratio, inventory, receivables. How quick can we sell things? How quick do we collect our money? And our current ratio. And our solvency is our debt to asset and our times of interest earned. Now, I'm going to go back to here. So there are, and Neil and Caitlin, don't chime in, there are two ratios on here and I'm going to go mini screen so I can go over here and see the chat. So there's 2 ratios on here. Does anybody got a guess on what 2 from here are going to be on the exam? You can type it in. I just have to go over to the other screen and find it. There we go. I'll go back over. So when I hear that ding, I'm going to come back over, or Neil will tell me. So what 2 ratios from this screen do you think will be on the test? Let me hear a couple types come in there. You got 6 to choose from.
Net profit, maybe.
Close. I'll give you a hint. Not net profit.
Gross.
Gross profit. All right, gross profit's going to be on the final. I'll give you a hint. The most widely watched ratio in the world.
Turnover? I don't know.
No. But I appreciate you trying. Neil, what's it saying?
Earnings per share, and we have an EPS and gross profit.
All right, so we got, earnings per share. EPS is earnings per share and gross profit. So those 2 will be on the final. All right, you might have to do a calculation, or you might have to tell me what it ends up meaning. All right, so earnings per share is about how much you are earning per share of stock. Gross profit is telling you how profitable, how profitable your company is being. All right, let's go to the next slide. There was 1 ratio from here that is going to be 1 ratio. What's our guess? Come on, someone's got to take a guess. All right, there we go. Yes, that is correct. Eskin said current ratio. Very first ratio you learned in class. Current assets over current liabilities. Can we pay our current debt? Remember, this is a ratio you and I live on every day, right? Can we pay our current bills? Can you pay your rent? Can you pay your cell phone? Can you pay your car payment? Current ratio. All right, that's ratio number 3. 1 ratio from here. And I hope this doesn't take very long for someone to guess. Which
Debt
one?
to asset.
Debt to asset, yep. This is basically saying, can we pay all of our bills? How are we standing? Do we want this to be 1? Do we want our assets to equal our liabilities? Think about that. And Neil and Caitlin, you can now answer too. Do we want that to equal 1? That means for every asset is financed with debt. You own nothing. Do you want that? No. All right, you don't want that, and you definitely don't want it to be higher than 1. You want it, this was one of your ratios for your annual report, and I believe it was 0.8 if you did it correctly. This is one of the only ratios you want to be low. It's one of your only ratios you want to be low. Right? You want to own some things. You want to have the ability to own things. You're going to have debt. You're going to hopefully have a house, and you're going to have payments on the house, and you might have a car, but hopefully you're going to own some of the car and own some of the house and own some of the things inside. If everything is financed by debt, you own nothing. All right. So let's get out of here. Go back over here.